Hey, alright, here we go. What's up, guys? It is Zerilath Immortal, and we are here ready to rock and roll with another one with the Bock Saga. At this point, I've covered just about every major film, with the exception of Who in the Hell is Eeyore Bock, because it's a biography of Bock and not information on the saga itself. Who in the Hell is Eeyore Bock is kind of about the things that made Bock who he is, living his life, holding on to this knowledge that the goddamn king of his country wouldn't let him open his trap about. Right? So, here, this is one of the major films we're going to jump into, which is Welcome to Hell, which is giving us the Bock Saga's account of the origins of Helsinki and explaining, what was it? No, not Rajasthan, because we already did Rajasthan. Shoot. I'm forgetting the names of things, but there's the big castle is going to be a big part of it, and so on and so forth, right? So this is an hour and 20-minute film. I want to hang out for over 2 hours. I want to see if we can get through the whole thing today. Hi, Parsons. How's it going? He says, hi, Zerilath, not Z, and then a little smiley winkies thingy going. Are you making a cute pun that I am Z. Z is the first initial of my assumed name. I mean, if you want to call me Steve, you can call me Steve if we're going to be that way. But no, it's all good. All right, guys. So we're going to jump in and listen to Jim do his thing. Today, I played Psycho History, which is the new Septic Flesh. I thought it was an appropriate title. All right. And away we go.
There's one story that I heard in 1985 in the winter. One friend of mine had one cassette tape who said that one man in Finland had told one story to him. And I had much respect for this friend of mine, and for him to tell me this story was what it was. I listened to this cassette many, many, many times of one friend of mine from Middle Europe who was telling the saga, who had learned it from this man from Finland. This family that this story comes from is the oldest family on the planet, according to my understanding. They're called the Bock, B-O-C-K, the Bock family. And this Bock family, they live in Helsinki, Finland. The whole family is gone now. The last member of this family, Eeyore Bock. Eeyore was born in Helsinki, Finland, January 17, 1942. And from the age of 7 to the age of 27, his mother, Rhea Bockström, and his sister, Raquel Bockström, these two women, they gave my friend one story, one saga called the Bock Saga, passed down in only one family on this planet. And until 1984, it had never come out of this family. They had kept it from the beginning. The story is one story, it's one his story. It's one saga called the Bock Saga. This story is based in one root language, one first language on this planet. It is also a mythology, or what they call one mythology. It's called the Väinämöinen mythology. It is the oldest mythology on the planet.
So we got 30, 27, 12, 20, 25, 4, 2. So we just got off.
Coming to one island called Susisaari. And the old name for Susisaari was called Udin's Island, the Sun Island. This name here is put here by the Catholics, which means Wolf Island. Backwards, Susi, Isus, Jesus, the island of Isus. And hell, or what we call Helsinki today, the new name for hell. Destroyed by the Catholics in 1050. In the year 1550, they rebuilt it and call it Helsingfors or Helsinki. But the
okay, so right here, and I missed this last time I listened to this one, where he's saying that Susi is, I guess this is the etymological root for the word or name Jesus. In fact, I want to pull that back just a pinch to make sure I fully got that. So we're at what, 301. Let's go to hold on a second. There we go.
We're coming to one island called Susisaari. And the old name for Susisaari was called Udin's Island, the Sun Island.
Okay, so Udin's Island, the Sun Island, was its original name. Or that's what I guess what Susisaari means.
This name here is put here by the Catholics, which means Wolf Island. Backwards, Susi, Isus, Jesus, the island of Isus. And hell, or what we call Helsinki today, the new name for hell. Destroyed by the Catholics in 1050.
And then Wolf Island. Now, that's very... Is that why it says Vargon? Right? Is that what we're talking about? Right? I'm trying to because I don't know what I'm looking at with the Finnish, right? So, is Susi supposed to mean wolf or Adi, right? Sus is actually, I know that Sus has a relationship to the word swine, right? This is why the name Jesus is not as dignified the name of a god as you would think it would be.
In the year 1550, they rebuilt it and call it Helsingfors or Helsinki. But the original name for Helsinki was called Hell or Hellstan. Udin.
And you know what? It's even making me think of Helsing. Actually, now that I think about Helsinki, Helsing, and Van Helsing. You got Von. Von is Vin, is Finn. So the Finn from Hell's Land, that's kind of cool. And if we're talking about Wolf Island, and we're talking about a guy who fights this is vampires versus wolves at a root etymological level.
In Helsinki, there's 7 hills which had 7 temples. And out a few kilometers in front of Helsinki, there's 7 islands. So this island that we're about to go to here is the true North Pole from before ice times. It is the top of the axle as it stood straight up before the ice came on the planet when we tilted. This is Udin's, the island of Udin, the Sun Island. In Finnish language, this is called Pyhänmaa, Holy Land.
Pyhänmaa,
okay, and they talk about one place called Valhalla.
Valhalla, yes, that's like Nordic.
It's Nordic, but it's also Finnish, because they have Valhalla restaurant here somewhere.
Yes, it's...
But the true Valhalla is straight down from this.
Ooh.
When Aaron's built this, was one castle here before.
That's exciting. It's like a ghost story.
No, it's not such a ghost story. I don't know if you ever heard of somebody called Bock.
Yes, I know, because he used to work as a tour guide. Yes, we know.
His family kept one oral story about this. You know, the Finnish people really don't know where they come from.
Yes. Well, he was very excited about like Finnish prehistory that year.
Yes.
And he made this kind of excavations.
I was there from the beginning. The Lemminkainen temple in Akenpezeranta.
Yes, I know that story. It's a very famous story.
It's a big story.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Anyway, we need to make the museum. I just need to make one small for the video in this room here. Okay, let's go do this room here. We're standing in one island called Susisaari, and Susi means wolf, and Saari means island. But before 1050, the name of this island was called Udin's And Udin is one ring, Udin is everything, Udin has always been, and Udin will always be, and Udin is the sun. So before the Catholics came here in 1050, this was called the Sun Island. They made it to be the Wolf Island. Straight below me here, standing in this room, is the exact point of the axle as it is tilted. It is the old North Pole. A long time ago the pole was sitting straight up like this. It wasn't tilted. And if you went to the very top of the axis, the pole, the E, there was one hole which is straight down below me. In the granite, still today, there is one hole. And this hole is what we call the Valhalla. Above this hole was one gate called Valhalla Val. You find this picture on 2 rune stones from Bock. What we know in the English and the rest of the planet is the gate to heaven.
Now, here's an interesting thing I'm going to point out. Now I'm looking at this shirt as is. Now, it's got even the markings inside that dome looking symbol we have there on his shirt. This looks like one of the symbols on the relief. Yesterday I covered in a few short minutes in a quick live stream some debunking of more fraudulent ancient alien theorists, or ancient technologist theorists, if you will, about the relief inscriptions on the Temple of Seti I in Abydos. And one of the unaltered, if you were to look at these superimpositions that was discussed in that video, one of those hieroglyphs looks like one of those domes. No inscriptions in it. But then you're looking at these dashing lines in it, and then these things almost looks like a bridge, almost, the way that looks there on the bottom. That looks like other hieroglyphs that you see in that version.
Is this as it was until 1050 when the Catholics broke it to pieces? Standing on this point right here, being the very top of the axle, the very North Pole, there came one line that went this way over the planet, went down through Crete, around to Hawaii, and this way, another line going this way through Russia, around the planet this way. So we're sitting in what we would call the original meridian line, or meridian line in English. There's 4 lines that go around the planet, divide the planet into 4 hemispheres. And we're standing right now where these 4 corners of the world meet. If you go straight down from me, there is this hole where the meridian line began, going around. So if I turn myself like this, I'm facing this way. I can put 1 foot here, straight, and 1 foot here. And my right foot is in the Western Europe. My left leg is standing in the east. So the division between east and west is one line that goes from here around this planet. This was the old 0 line. In 1675, the 0 line was moved in one map situation. The Dutch created one map making one new 0 line. And in the 18th century, I think, they moved this line to Greenwich in London. So they make that the 0 line today, where this is the true 0 line of the planet here.
Now, when you think about it, think about this time frame. He's talking about the 1800s. All all the things where he says the changes happen to these orientations he's claiming. You know, we're talking about 200 years ago. This is only 200 fucking years ago that we were oriented in the world this way, and that countries were named a little bit different. This is there's a number of things that make sense to me here. This is also in the pocket towards the end of the Little Ice Age in Europe. This would have been quite a hardcore time, right? And it would make sense with Finland and the evergreen trees and the relationship to the British Empire as such, right? To hold these trees for their sap, to make the sealant for their ships, so on and so forth. They're not going to get wood that much anywhere else because a lot of the evergreens would not have done well during the mini ice age. To where he said what timestamp to hey, how's it going, Timony? And Studio, how you doing, man? Studio Clark. Well, he's speaking right here at the about the 8-minute mark, little before 8-minute mark. And then I think it was roughly back here where he was in front of this sign at around the 2.5-minute mark is where he mentioned the 1800s again when it came to the name changes. Okay, here we go.
So we're actually, the whole planet is 1 hour off what we should be. It should be here, the Zerilath. And straight down from me here is one hole in the granite. Today it's covered with one wood. Wooden floor, but if you were to take the wooden floor up in the basement of this museum, there would be one. It's been covered over, but they built, the Catholics built some kind of story over this hole in the top of the axle. But if you looked inside, you take an excavation, you can find what we call one group or one hole in the very top of the...
I'm sorry, I was muted then? My bad. Shoot, what was the point that I was making? Crap. I jumped right back into paying attention to Jim to make the next comments I'd be caring to. Daylight savings time in America. With daylight savings time, are we 1 hour, are we straight or are we 2 hours back when we do our thing? And which one of those time frames counts as that, right? Because I think right now we are off kilter with the rest of the world. Anyway.
The planet, in the very top of the E, we also call this axis one E. And the dot above the I or the E is the North Star. So if you go straight up from here, you will come to the North Star. It's the pole star. And this hole in the top of the E is the hole, and the E is the E. It's the word holy. If you come from this point right here, 125 kilometers, and you turn this radius into one circle, you will make one ringland at the very top of the North Pole. And this ringland, its name is Udenma. Uden is the sun, Ma is the land. It was called the Sunland because the sun was making a 24-hour golden ring around this island in what we call the paradise time, before the planet shifted over. In the Bock Saga we explain about a time before the ice on the planet, what we call the paradise or paradise in English.
You know, another thing that's making me think too, because I keep hearing that about the ring and everything else, right? So, how was a golden ring 24 hours a day made, right? If we're talking about the paradise, we can't be talking about a 24-hour sun, right? Because I think typically we always had a nighttime or something to that effect, right? I'm pretty sure we had night because everything is rotating, and Bock Saga is a globe Earth mythology. So anyway, let's keep going.
And I guess there's not so much more to say about this ruin except that if we went straight down from here, this is what in the Norse mythology, what they call Valhalla. This is one Val, one wall, and below is one Hall, one hole. And law means all, means everything. Law means the law. So in this.
Okay, and right there, I'm also going to say another thing. That there's obviously a dual meaning to the prefix of Val, because now Val is wall for Valhalla. So it's the walled land around the whole is, I guess, basically what it's trying to say, right? But that context also, because of what Val means to us, then goes into its other meaning that we know, especially in Old Norse, about Val and how I've said valiant, valor, value, so on and so forth, for the Valkyrie, etc., etc.
The story is said that all the soul and all the spirit, when we died, went back into this hole when we were sitting straight up and down. And now we'll go outside and I'll give a little story about this hill at this most holy of places. This Udinma, the hole in the top of the E, and the land around this is called the Holy Land. In root language is called Hel-League, Hel-League, Hel-Eeg, Hel-E Grund, or Hel-E ground. In Bond language in Finnish is called Piha-Ma. Piha means holy, Ma means the land, so this is the Holy Land. This is the original Holy Land. Israel is not the Holy Land. There's no hole on the top of the E in Israel. The story got changed in the history. So we're standing exactly in the middle of the true Holy Land.
Standing here on the island of Udin, and in the paradise time, there was one ringland here called Udinma. If you still go to Helsinki, you can ask anybody where Udinma is, and they'll say you're standing in Udinma. So it's still one name that they know about today. Around Udinma were 6 more ringlands. I think I know 5 of them. Towards Estonia was Estenma. Towards Russia, Cumanma. Hammondma, Liebenma, Turenma towards Turku. Anyway, 6 ringlands around 7 ringlands at the very top of the planet. And out from these 7 ringlands, this whole planet was divided into 250-kilometer ringlands, more than 2,000 ringlands. And in each of these ringlands were living 3 classes of people: Jarlar, Karlar, and Traillar. Jarl, Karl, and Trail. Jarl in English is the earl. Kar is the gentry or crofter, the middle class. And Trail we would call the serf. So we had 3 classes of people. This hill that we're standing on now, going like this, in the Finnish language we call it Kuuntelavori. Kuuntelavori. And Ku is the moon, Tel means to tell, and Vori means mountain. So it's the mountain where you tell about the moon. And the root language is called Lysnarberget. Lys means to listen. Nar are the information people in the second family of this story. The Nars, they're taking out the information. They're the narrators, the narrators. And Bore means mountain. Lysnarberget. Berget means mountain. So in English we call it the Nars listening mountain. Where we're standing now
Bari,
in the paradise was called...
And of course Bori is Odin's grandfather, right? And so that is, like, even though his name is Odin, which is like Udin, and thus he doesn't really have any direct children. Udin's only direct child is Ma. Ma is the only real direct child of Udin, right? As we understand the original mythology per se, and that is that works in the Kalevala with how Ukko's daughter is released into the cosmos and pregnant forever, so on and so forth. I've covered a little bit of this correlation also.
The arena. An arena is one place where these Nars, these information people from the Rosette, they came and they stood here, and behind you about where this bushes are, they built one big fire. And these Nars in the very top of this hill, I'll come to that when we get there, was the king. And these Nars would scream questions across this fire to this Ra, to this king. There was a tower behind this place called Glancehim, which was one tower looking down on this Valhalla valve, looking down on the gate to heaven. So the whole concept of the All-Father at the top, looking down on the top of the planet, it comes from this island here. It's not really somebody living in space out there who's looking down. It was at the very top of the axle. There was a tower called Glancehim. Glance means shimmering, him means home. It was one tower covered in gold, so you could only like glance. And in the top of this tower was the All-Father of the planet. In the Van, we call him Ukko. In the root language, we call him Gube. In English, we call him Per. We're all sons and all daughters of Per. We're Per's sons. He's our parent. We come from his sperma. So Per went to Father. And standing in the top, sitting in the top of this tower, was one small niche where the All-Father of the planet could sit down and look to the gate of heaven. Because this is what we would call the gateway to heaven. This is called Valhalla Valve. At the base of this hill was his son, Ra, the king, what we call Kuning As. In Van language, Ku is the moon, As are the As peoples, the As that represents the moon. Kun in the root language and king or Ra. This information system was where these Nars could scream questions to the Ra. Ra would turn around and scream the question up to his father in the tower above heaven, above this Valhalla. The All-Father would hear the question. He would stand at the top of the planet like this, a living human being, not one. And in this, he would sit and think about this. He would, what we call Kela, he would think very deeply about this question. When he had the answer, he threw the question back to his son Ra, and Ra threw the question, the answer back to the Nars down here, so they could hear what the All-Father and this Ra in one parliamentary system. These Nars would now go out via to these ringlands, one Nar to each ringland, taking the program that Per or Tur. Per is also Tur. Ra is the king, and the Nars are the Nars. So the Nar, Ra, Tur, and Tur standing like this in one T. And these Nars would take this program out to the middle class of people called Kar people. And these Kar people had something called one Rasti. And Rasti is a ring with an even cross in the middle, just like this place where we are right now. It's the center of the planet, and these meridian lines go out and make one cross at the North Pole. And in this
and we
ring,
all know that.
three,
And we all know that as, your Iron Cross, your Solar Cross, your symbol of King's Dominion, so on and so forth.
Box, 3 goats would come out, and they would give the performance the pair had said to give to them. The pair, for men say. For the men, they say pair, in what they call voorstelling in root language. And these 3 characters dressed in Bock and goat suits, they would come out and give the information to the people. They would give it to the Kar people, and they would act out what Tur had to say. So they were Kar actors. There were Kars acting Tur, and Tur was giving them the program from the top of this. A little bit how this language works inside this saga. So
that's also a primordial form of shamanic channeling, right? You wear the mask, you channel the deity, right? And we all know that Frey and Freya are the original goat men.
So this is the arena, and now we'll walk up this Lisnarberry, this Kumtalavori, this Nars listening hill, and we'll walk up to the top and give one story from up there. So we're standing here at the grave of Augustus Arensford. He was responsible for the building of this whole 7 islands, this whole fort, Suomenlinna, and this was where the Ra, the king, he would stand. Where these bushes are here is where the fire was burning. And on the other side is where the Nars were standing, throwing the questions very loudly across the fire so Ra could hear. And he was again throwing the question back up to the All-Father, who's standing in this tower above the end of this museum today, straight above the hole in the top of the axle of the planet, the original North Pole. And this was the information system where the Nars were listening on this mountain to what the king and the All-Father gave to the men, because the men got it from the Ra and from the All-Father. The women got it from Akka, the High Woman, and her daughter Maya, the sister. So there's another construction somewhere around here where the women had their story. For every man's story, there's a woman's story. In the mythology, you have God and Goddess. In the religion, you only have God. And this is the mythology of Vainamonen.
So, another interesting thing I haven't seen yet. I got to see if there's one available. I'd love to see a map, at least a depictive map, because I don't think there's going to be an original to find, but some sort of depictive map of hell, right? Because, like, he just explained this whole layout. In fact, you know, obviously this whole 20 minutes he's been explaining this layout of Helsinki in the original time, right? There was an Yggdrasil tree, there's this tower, there's a big fucking castle and a moat, there's these places where the Nars and the Cars and all that are doing their thing, and, and so, you know, everything is, all these important symbols of high holy symbols are originated right up in here, you know, so it makes you think a lot.
In the paradise times, we all had family trees. In the paradise, we had the palm tree. After paradise, when the ice came, we had the oak tree. And each family had one tree that was their family tree. And when this tree, it had a very special meaning in these days. There's two words we have. One is called soul, and one is called spirit. They're different. They're not the same. In the story, the name, as you take a breath in and out, you're taking the spirit in and out. In root language, spirit is called ande. And to breathe is called andas. In the Van language, the name for spirit is called henki. And the name for breath is called henkinas. So the spirit and the breath has to do with the spirit. The soul, which comes from the sun, the soul, the solar, the soul is inside every cell in your body. It is the life force. It's not the spirit. It's different than the spirit. And in the paradise time, up until the year 1050, everybody on this planet, when we died, we were burned. And when the fire burned down, in the bottom of the fire was something called ash. And ash is the driest thing on the planet. And the pagan people, the heathen people, the Paakana people, they said that the soul was in the ash. Everything else had burned away, but the soul was contained in the ash. So they collected this ash, and they put it in one bull's ball, and they sewed your ash up into this sack. And your soul in the ash was taken to your family tree. We all belong to oak trees, what we call ek. And now your ash, your soul they made one hole where they put your ash, your soul, into the roots of the tree, and they covered it back up. So now you have your family tree, that all the people in your family, their ash goes underneath one tree. So when you look at one tree, your grandmother, your grandfather, your older brother, everyone who has died in your family from beginning your family, their ash was put underneath one tree. And in this process, the soul, the life, is sucked through the moisture system, through the damp system, into the root of the tree. Your soul is then becoming into what we would call, in Finnish language, mahala, or mahla they call it, mahala, mahla. In the root language we call it sav, and in English we call it sap. So the soul would go into the sap of the tree. It would rise up the stem or the trunk of the tree. And from there it would go to the branch of the tree. And from the branch it would go to the leaf of the tree. Our life would go to the leaf. And the word life comes from the word leaf. So now our life, our soul, our leaf, is in the leaf. And this time we are what you could say, you be the leaf. You be the leaf. And that's where the belief system comes from. From the leaf, the sun, which makes the soul, sucks the soul out from this green of the leaf. And now this green, the soul goes back into what we call in the root language centrifugal, or English centrifugal force. And all the soul and all the spirit on this planet would go back into the air and spinning around and around when the planet was sitting straight up and down, and it was all brought to this hole in the top of this pole to what we call the holy. So all soul and all spirit from all living things all went to the hole. And this is what they would call the heaven. In Van language they call it Taiwan or Taibas. In root language they call it Himmel. In English we call it heaven. So this is where the true heaven, or where our soul went to. The man who's standing in the top, he's called Ukko or Vainamonen. He's called Gube, or in English he's called Per. And he's standing straight over where this soul. He's a young man, he's called Lemminkainen. And Lemminkainen, he's the breeder. And as he's making children with the Jotun, the Bock and the Swan, Lemminkainen, Jotun, he's breathing the air. So the soul and the spirit is going back into these people as they make this story in one ring of soul, as we reincarnate back into the human race, because all people are coming out from this All-Father and this All-Mother. This is the very center of hell. This is what we would call Midgard, the garden in the middle. And we're standing on the old Valhalla right here. So there really was an All-Father looking down from above the planet, from one golden tower, looking onto the gate of heaven. This is called Valhalla Val. And standing in front is called Ra, or he is also Kuningas in Van language. He's called Heirs in root language, and we would call him the king in English. Kuningas, Heirs, and king. And this is a story about how the soul goes back. All this was destroyed by the Catholics in 1050. There came 30,000 men from the Vatican who came to Udenma. And they made a ring around Udenma, and they came to the middle, and they killed all the Finnish people here. And so at this time, the Finnish people, they lost their history. The Finnish people have been here many years. But the history, they don't know where they come from, the Finnish people. When the church came here, they destroyed. The Bock family, they ran into exile. One went up to Kajani, and the All-Father went up to Korvatuntri. And this was where the Yule Puki, or the Santa Claus story, comes from 1050 to 1250. Maybe we'll save that story for another day. Standing here in Kajani Castle, middle Finland. This walls and what we see here is not really real. It's reconstructed in the 1930s. In the middle of this river there's a granite bedrock, and the true castle is actually another 7 meters down from here. They built one dam in the beginning of the century, last century, to create electricity here, and the water level rose quite a bit. So they had to come up several meters to build what you see here today, which is completely one fake. This is not the real castle whatsoever. The real castle was a place where the king and the queen of Finland, Kuningatar, they fled from Uudenmaan in the year 1050 when the Catholic Church came up to kill everybody in southern Finland and tried to eliminate this Bock family from the planet. The king and the queen, they escaped. They came up here. It's about 500 kilometers or so north of where they were in Rasapuri. And here they lived for 250 years as hell was burned and South Finland was basically destroyed by the church. Where we stand here is in the middle of a courtyard, about where it was. And in 1250, they made an agreement with Sweden that they could come back down to South Finland if they never said anything about being the king and the queen of Finland. They made an agreement, so they did like that. And when they did so, they buried in this well. There was a well here in the middle of this court. It's about 7 meters down. They buried a scepter, a crown, and one golden statue, about 288 kilos of pure gold from before ice time. They buried in an old well here. We took some tests back in the 1990s, one ground radar, to show that there was one metal box down in the ground here, 6 or 7 meters down. So it'd be very nice if we could get the Finnish government or somebody to come and take the crown and the scepter to the King of Finland. This is one of those places where there are artifacts buried here in the Finland that could prove the story that the Bock Saga is true. So there was one photo that we saw at Eeyor's funeral back in the 24th of 2011 when we put his ashes in the ground. There was a photo of this small island here where the water level was way down, where they had let the water go through, and you could actually see the top of the true ruins, which I said was on bedrock. And today we have this beautiful dam here giving power to the people. Standing here into the entrance of the Lemminkainen temple. This temple is from before ice times. It's from what we call the paradise times. This tall stone that's standing there next to this hill is one granite hill. It's part of the bedrock. The stone to the right hand side, this is called Sundial rock. And as we go down, we can take a more of a photo of it. The trees have covered it up now. But this is put here by human beings. This is not natural. There's 3 granite stones underneath it at rest on top of the granite, or what we call the peruskallio or the uurberg. This tall stone, this Etistu stone, is not part of the hill. You see this crack that goes down. The stone was put here. And if you look to the texture of the granite in the top of the stone, it's not the same texture as this stone. So this stone doesn't belong to this hill. It's separate from this hill. The stone is where the highest woman on the planet, where she went Etistupa. In English we call her Ella. In Finnish we call her Akka. And in root language we call her Guma. And the place where we are right now is Akanpesaranta. Akka is the old woman, Pesa is one nest, and Ranta means beach. In root language called Gumbustrand. Gum is Guma, the old woman, Bu is one nest, and Strand is one beach. So in English, the old woman's beach nest. This whole surrounding is named for the woman. And this is Akka's et the stupa, Guma's et the stupa, Ella's et the stupa. And she fell, when she fell from this stone, making et the stupa, when she fell backwards from this stone, when she lifted her stick up, she fell and she landed on the bedrock in the entrance, in front of the entrance to the Lemminkainen temple. The Akka never went into the temple. Only the men went into this temple. It's his story. But the whole outside is named for the woman.
All right, so one thing real quick is with the deeds of Ella in context to what happened with Lemminkainen Temple. Lemminkainen is cognate to Balder in our mythos, right? This is also Balder's temple in that respect. And Balder is the slain god to be resurrected, right? So that's all happening here. Lemminkainen also dies. He dies in a river in the underworld, and his body is dismembered. And his mother, this is the trope of the mother going through hell to save her child, right? This is why it is my contention that Hermod, because if you look at the Old Norse, it's the TH sound. It's not the D. I mean, it's a dental sound, the D and the T, the D, the T. It's a dental. D's, T's, TH's. Or thurs, right? So it's Hermod, Moth, mother, Ma Thor, mother of Thor, in that sense, right? Or Ma Tor, matter, falling into matter, perhaps. But point is that, as you can see, look at how we're working with etymology and language. This is mother stitching her son back together to bring him back to life. You are seeing the effort of the world of attempting to bring gratitude for Balder back to the world, right? We are convincing talk. We are convincing the Jotun of gratitude itself to weep for Balder, to know the absolute significance of the loss.
This land that we are standing in is one land called Udenma, which I explained about earlier. It's one land that starts from one North Pole point on one island, comes 125 kilometers away. You take this and turn it in one radius and you create one ring of land. And this temple here is about 30 kilometers from the North Pole. And the name for this ring was called Hell before. But hell wasn't a bad place. Hell was the head, it was the center of the whole pagan dome of the planet. In 987...
All right, I want to take a pause real quick. Let's see. We got Man Art Lab. Is that you, Studio? Are you Man Art Lab? I can't tell the language that your name is actually written in, but somebody sent me a very, very archaic map. This is not like this doesn't look like it's a map that's a recreation based on Jim Chesner's work. This is very archaic. Let me keep going here. I'm going to pull up this map in a second. I got to make a thing for it, but keep listening.
These people, these Oz people, this Bock family, they knew that this Christian church had made two arms. The Roman Catholic was coming up through Europe, coming this way, and the Greek Orthodox were heading towards Russia, this other way, from Constantinople. And they knew that this Christian dome was coming to destroy hell, because they'd already written in their book that hell was the worst place on the planet and only the bad people go there. So this family, they knew that they had to preserve this. They could not let the church find what was inside this temple, which I will explain later. So they closed it up in 987. And as we go down, I'll explain what they did to close this place up. There were huge granite stones behind me, going all the way down, so we had to take these stones away. We blew them away and we took them away. And we start to go down this granite hill. Today it's very muddy, but maybe we have one picture when it's very cleaned out and everything. And now we'll walk down here and we'll see what I have to say down here. In the year 987 they closed this temple up, and they said that in 1,000 years the Bock that was alive at this time, it was his obligation to open this temple. So 1987, a group of us had met in Goa with Eeyore Bock, and he told us about this temple and what's inside this temple and its purpose. We all came and we met here in July of 1987, and now we were going to start to dig out, and I was given the title of Digging Master number 1 because I started the first day to dig on this thing. We worked 4 years to get to where we are, but anyway, we'll continue down the mountain and I'll explain what we found and how we found it. The first thing was my good friend Kevin Woods stood on top of the Etzastupa with one broom, and he pushed the broom off and it spun and came down and landed, boom. And that's where the Akka, that's where the Guma, that's where the Ella, where she landed when she went at the stupa. Right where this entrance, this cave entrance is, we start to dig about where the water level is there. You can see the wet level. That was sand up to that level, a little bit higher actually. And we came down from there to just above the entrance to the cave, and there we came to 3 granite slabs, completely rectangular, stacked on top of each other. The picture shows 4, but there was 3, and between each granite slab was one layer of like this clay. So as we drilled the drill into this rock, it would go about 1.5 meters, and then it just woo. So the drilling master, Heikki Kulinen, he could straight away understand that this granite, completely rectangular granite, inside this natural surrounding, it wasn't natural, it was put there by human beings. We went through 3 of these stones, and when we came to the last stone, there was a stone pushed into the mouth of the cave, completely sealed in with clay, fit exactly in this hole. And there we start to make drilling, and about 2 meters, 2.5 meters, the drill went woo. So he could straight away understand that this stone, this big kiwi, this big stone that was pushed into the mouth of the cave, it wasn't natural either. It had clay. So we exploded this, he drilled, we put dynamite, and he came and he boomed, and we blew this first stone out. Behind that we found one other large stone pushed into this mouth, and he drilled that out. He blew, rocks flew across, broke this telephone pole across the street. And now when these stones were cleared out.
All right, so Studio Clark, he sent me a couple things. I don't want to pause the whole show for this, but this depiction here is where I wanted to focus. So, okay, cool. You can see my cursor and all that stuff. And I think this is supposed to be from what's on that stone, and then with a few added details or something like that, maybe. It's hard to say precisely what this is meant to be. It's showing a lot of ships, a lot of men on ships, as such. Like, if it's a map of something, I don't see it as a map of Odenma. We have a well-endowed figure right here, which this obviously would be the closest person or the biggest person, the most important person, right? And you know, perhaps he's depicted as such because maybe this is Per and these are all his sons. There's a lot of things that could be said about what we think we're looking at here. But anyway, I just wanted to give you guys that for a hot second. I wouldn't say that that is a map of Udma or of hell, if you will, or Valhall, right? We're technically looking for a map of Valhall. Anyway, let's get back to Lemminkainen over here.
Behind was just one wall of boulders, different sized boulders, all built in a wall with clay and this stuff they call rapakivi, which is a kind of a small stone that's found only on the surface. It's not found under the ground here in Finland. So these people had actually just packed this cave full of these boulders with this clay, just rock walls. We started to drill, exploding, and what we noticed in the beginning as we went inside, this granite hill, the floor continues. It's really one natural granite floor inside here. And we noticed that in the top there was a ceiling, and the ceiling is one granite ceiling continuing down and down and down with all this filler that they fill inside, all these boulders and things they pushed inside this cave. The temple itself is inside this hill. This hill is called Kypelivori, which means prick-playing hill, but anyway, the temple goes down inside. So now we've blown, I don't know how many meters, we're 30 meters, 40 meters inside this cave, and now we started to take out, going inside. And we should follow that way, and at some time we will come to one golden door. And behind the golden door is another story which I will give later, what's inside this temple as we understand it. I want to make the point that we're not looking for a temple at all. We're not looking. We know where it is. We just want to get to it. Level here that you see, this light, is about level with the road, a little bit below. This is where the sand, where we started to dig. Eeyore had some plastic buckets and some shovels he already put here.
And you can naturally see, like, look at that. You see that straight line striation, right? That's been layered.
So on the 19th of July, 1987, I came down here and we started to take some buckets of sand out. The next day I was joined with a friend of mine from Sweden, Eric, Kevin Woods, Kari Newman from Finland, Cheryl Mele, and another small group of people who had spent time with Eeyore, who had heard about what was down inside this. So next day we started to excavate the buckets of sand. We came down about 3 meters, and on this wall over here somewhere was one checkerboard, 8 squares by 5 squares. Put there, a little crude, but definitely dug into it, nothing natural with these squares. And they call this one Hellristring, 5 by 8, Isi Ud. We called the museum, Museivirasto, had them come out because when you found some kind of ancient anything, you had to call them to see. They came out, they looked at it, they said it was nothing. So it gave us the permission to go down as we start to excavate this temple from before ice times. We came down and down and down with sand, finally getting some equipment, a little bobcat machine, to start to take the sand up this beautiful granite hill. And we came here to just above the level of the entrance, and we came to one granite slab. 8-meter by 4-meter granite rectangular slabs. And as Mr. Hakulinen drilled down into the first one, I was standing next to him, and when his drill went about 1.5 meters, it just went whoa. And the expression on his face, because this is not natural, if this is really bedrock, there should be no whoo when it's drilled. So he drilled again and again, and it kept doing whoo, whoo, just going into something soft underneath this granite stone. And by looking at the rectangular stone, you knew that it's not natural for something like that to be here. So he put dynamite and we exploded this stone. And underneath it was another one just like it, completely rectangular. It had been put on top with this like clay they call rapakivi. It's like a clay substance, small stones. So he drilled down again, and boom, another one. And then there was another one, rectangle underneath that. He exploded that, boom. We came down to just in front there, and there he drilled one more time, but it didn't come to the woo. But anyway, we exploded because we didn't know, and we blew a hole in the bedrock in the Petroscalio and the Urberry. So that's all filled in with sand right there. But when these 3 stones were taken out, there was just one large stone just pushed straight into the entrance of the cave. And he drilled through that, and behind that was also woo. So he knew that wasn't natural either. So he put dynamite, blew it out. And behind that was one more stone, almost the same size, a second big. He drilled through that, and same thing, woo, exploded it out. And then we just came to these walls and walls and walls of rocks set in with this kind of like cement stuff. And we kept blowing a little more and more every summer, 88, 89, 90, until we came down and we start to go this way. We follow a perfect granite ceiling going down, a perfect granite floor going down, and in between it's just this stuffed willow rock walls. And you can see where it's all settled because you can see the ceiling continuing down. So it's just to continue the ceiling. The ceiling, the proof is in the roof. So if we can just continue the ceiling and follow and take everything out that's not natural, then we'll eventually come to one golden door. And I'll explain what's behind the golden door in another thing later on. It's just to continue taking the stone out. And we don't know how far we have to go. We could be one explosion. We could be 1 meter. We could be 30 meters. We don't know. The doorway has to be higher than this water, though. So the door must be up in here somewhere. But we're continuing down like this. This whole room is one water lock. Somewhere in front of us is a plug where you can pull one plug, and the water, as it rains, it just goes out to the sea down the hill. But they put the plug in. When they didn't use the temple, they put the plug in and filled up with water. When they wanted to use it, they pulled the plug out, and this whole thing would just drain out. Today we have to pump it out over the road because we haven't come to this plug that's somewhere in front of us.
So yeah, that's there's this notorious like flooding situation that goes on with the temple, and he claims that because he knows that this is the temple, that there should be a water release valve that lets it drain on its own, right? And of course, somebody to protect this secret covered it all up, and probably done by good guys, right? And now it's all just being held back for reasons.
Stupa. Down here is the sundial, what we call the sundial rock. And on this rock was a ring with a pole in the middle of the ring. And when Udin, the sun, cast the shadow that it was 12 o'clock, Akka would be standing here with her stick facing this way. And at 12 o'clock she could see that it was now 12 o'clock. She would lift her stick straight up to the sun, and as she lifted her stick she couldn't stand anymore. She fell. She could still stand with her stick, but she couldn't walk with the stick. So as she lifted the stick up, she pointed it straight to the sun, to Udin, and she fell straight off the back in front of the door to the Lemminkainen temple. There was a wooden construction here where they could bring her up to the top, and as she stood there, there were no trees anywhere here. And all the people around, all the Asur Vanir, I guess Asur people, they could come and they could see the Akka. And this is the top of Kypelibori here. The temple is straight down inside here. We've done radar machine tests on this mountain. I was here when Mr. Kopinen did a test, and I helped him lay the wires out, but we never put the machine on that point there, which is probably just about where we are inside the cave, is underneath this stone somewhere here. We've gone through the mouth, we've gone to the back of the stone, and now we're coming down inside this hill here. And that's where we were, where we left off in 1990 when everything stopped. This hill that we're standing on is called Kypelibori, and when we were looking into the entrance to the cave of the temple, it's the rock on this left-hand side.
So there's something interesting. He said, like, you know, Akka had the stick pointing at the sun, and then till she couldn't lift it anymore, and she fell. Was he kind of roughly going over what he talks about the elderly death ritual? Are we talking about when she's too old, she gets carried up and then thrown off of a high place to her death after she said goodbye to everybody? Because literally she's talking about all the Aesir and the Vanir were there. Like, I think that's what he was implying, that this was also the place where we would toss the elderly when they couldn't walk anymore, that kind of thing. But anyway.
Right, this is one granite hill. About 80 meters over there is that tall stone called Akka's Ettastupa, where she fell and she could not walk with her stick anymore.
Okay, yeah, all right. That's right.
All these trees here were not on this before, and when they brought the Akka from where she fell, they brought her to this place right here, and there they had one wood for to burn the Akka, the highest mother on the planet. And people, the bay is out there, and there were people in boats, people all in the area to see the Akka, and as they burned, the smoke would come up, so that people come from everywhere all over, because she was our all-mother. And they could see the fire, the smoke from Akka as she was burned. And this is the burning place where they brought the Akka. From here they took her ash and they carried it over to the Snappertuna, where we were at the Snappertuna church, and there was one ash tree that was called the Yggdrasil, which is the world tree of all living things. And there the Akka, her ash with her soul in it, was put underneath this ash tree. Her ash was under the ash tree, and there she went back to Valhalla via this centrifugal, this centrifugal force, as her soul came up to the top of the tree and collected at this island where we were this morning, which is about 30 kilometers or so from here. We're about 30 kilometers, maybe a little bit less, from the North Pole right here. But anyway, this is millions, more than 1 million Akkas were burned here. Only she could be burned here, and only she could fall off the Ettastupa. This is her her place, Artenpezaranta, Gumbu Strand, the old woman's beach nest. Now we go Rasapuri, the oldest castle on the planet. They call this Rasapuri Lina. Ra is the king, Ras is the race, and A is in the sperm, Ras A. Lina is the line of the king. Just playing. Oh, this is a very nice picture. This big tower here is called Ra Bell Tower. And this is the Heirs Tower, or this is the Heirs Tower and my tower. We actually have it, what it used to kind of look like, with the water around it. But it was covered with a white chalk, so it made the reflection of a white castle on top of a rock in the middle of a lake. And this is where the Cinderella story comes from. Ella is another name for the Akka, the high woman on the planet. In English, it's Per and Ella. In root, it's Gubma and Gube. In Avan, it's Ukko and Akka. So,
I'm wondering if where we get our word parallel. Per and Ella?
in there, right there, Ella. There, Ella. Cinderella. Who is the mother of Maya and the mother of Ra. This bedrock that it's sitting on top of is called one kast. And when you build one construction like this, and the king, he could tell from the kast. So it becomes one kastel. He cast out. He cast. In Finnish language, kaste means to baptize. So this castle is not built for fortification, it's built for, it's a baptism. Before
and of course we're casting spells.
The baptism was a different baptism that we know today. It was a water baptism, but it was from the king. And he could cast he could cast and then you put L on the end of it, it becomes castel, which we call castle in English. We leave the T out. And we make it castle, but it's actually castel. This is the oldest castel on the planet. The foundation stones for this castle is from 9,034 years ago. This castle, it's the winter house for Ra and Maya, the king and the queen. The towers were knocked down by the Catholics. They came and they destroyed this castle in 1050. And this is when Ra and Maya, this is when they went into exile up to this little castle Kayani that we just came from. The name for this castle is called Ra Se Puri. Ra is the king, Ras is the race, Se is the sea, and Puri is our family trees. Our Pu means tree, Ri means again and again, so you can read the tree of your family in the race of human beings. Lina means line, so it's the line of Ra. And this castle we're looking at here, this foundation stones are from 9,034 years ago. This is the oldest castle on the planet. In the east we have palace, and in the west we have castel, or castle as we say it today. This is the winter home for Ra and Maya, the king and the queen. The king, he represents the moon. In Bon language, Ku means the moon, and As means the As people, so he is called Kuning As. Tar means female, moon is...
Tar means female, and once in a while this happens. First time it's ever happened in a live stream where there's all of a sudden a lag, a wheel of death is now spinning. Ugh, come on. Bear with me, folks. All right, where are we at here? We're at 56:13, so we got about 20 minutes left on this. I'm gonna reset this. Bear with me a second here. Right. All right. Hold on.
The planet.
Oh, there we go.
Made from...
Stop it. Go. Okay, good.
Gold, because gold belongs to the sun. Gold never tarnishes. And stones, beautiful stones. And they had no value because gold had no value except that you could make beautiful artifacts, beautiful handicraft from the gold. And we call this, in English, we call it aesthetics. In root language, we call it estatik. Es is the sun, ta is the take, and tik has to do with time. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Mathematique, antique, antiquity. So these beautiful handicrafts that were created on these different ringlands over the planet were sent up to the...
Now, I'm wondering if teak and tech are kind of the same, because then with tech you get the ek, and the ek is the oak, right? And then you're asking yourself, would there be a correlation there if there is to teak, right? Because, teak is going to be basically TIC versus X, which is EKS.
This castle, they were sent to this court of the court, this Asener's court, in one system called Ye Hov Va. Ye meaning to give, ye, yo, ye, yes. Hov meaning the court itself, the castle itself is the hove, coming from the word huv, which is the shape of one horseshoe, which is one of the symbols of Ra. The rose, the horseshoe, is a symbol for Ra. And every 50 years, inside this castle become full of beautiful, beautiful handmade artifacts from a time we have no idea that humans even were in existence. And every 50 years would become a new Ra and Maya, because the old king and the old queen, the new Kuning As, the new Kuning Atar, they would become old. They would become the old king and the old queen. And every 50 years became a new Ra and a new Maya in one line of race-making family.
Now, Kuning also makes me think of the word kenning. And a kenning are the various, is an attestation of a thing, like a god, right? Like Odin is the one-eyed one, the spear shaker, I don't know, it's all these things that are those reference points for the god when you don't want to say the god's name, because you are evoking a quality of the god in context to what you say about the circumstance or the subject.
And in this period of time, this castle would become full of these beautiful aesthetique or aesthetics. And they had to take all this aesthetics or this aesthetique out from this castle, and they had to store it somewhere, because the next Yehovah system was coming, the next giving system to the Hove of the Ah. And so they went about 30 kilometers to the east of Helsinki, which was the old name for hell. hell was destroyed in 1050, which I'll come to in a minute. And there they had something called the Lemminkainen Temple, which was one small little temple which we will cover when we go to this place. But it had one storehouse where they would store these eras, these Jehovah systems, in one time where each Ra and Maya would store those periods, that artwork, and then the next was the next and the next, and one over 1 million generations of this Bock family. So you can think that's 50 million at least. We say that the human race is from the paradise times. And the ice times has been 50 million, 10,031 years since we had ice on the planet. And the paradise time was longer than the ice time, so the human race, according to the Bock Saga, is more than 100 million years old. When we lived on this planet, when it was completely tropical, there was no ice. Where we're standing now was tropical plants instead of arctical plants. This castle, in the year 1050,
Right.
or let's go to the year 10.
1 second, going to take a pause here. Thank you, Clark. Let's see. We got here. This may actually be what I'm looking for. At least an archaic one. Or somebody's, yeah, I mean, basically, yes. Now, there's number coordinations. I would need to have the key to see what these numbers are saying things are. But from here, I'm looking, and we can kind of clearly see that we have the 4 quadrants. We have a layout. We've got the ring-like shape of things. This could be it. Good work. Excellent work. And then you also, if I go back here a second, you also threw me this, and you said, could this be the Ark? That's an interesting question. I don't think it's the Ark. I don't think it's an Ark, even though we got this thing that's bowing down in each one of these. These are buildings. These are buildings, and some of these look like churches, or something. They got these little cross units. I'm not sure if those are supposed to be depicting Christian crosses, and that this is depicting something happening in the Bock Saga in the Christian era. I mean, that looks like a teepee over here in this this left side one in the middle. It's fascinating, right? I'd have to get the something that gives me these markers and tells me what all these markers are, because these are probably telling me something. Like this here looks like it says 1420 or 30 something for this. That looks almost like a man. Right? Or something to that effect. So thank you so much. It's good to see that. All right, let's get back to the film.
1049, they came to the first pope called Leo IX from Saxon, from Germany, what we call Germany today. And this Leo IX had to do one system where they were trying to eliminate the old pagan dome of the planet. And so this Leo IX, the Pope from 1049 to I think 1054, he organized one army from at the time called Helvetia, today called Switzerland. And he paid with gold from the Vatican 30,000 mercenary army to come up and kill everybody in the south of Finland, because they had to destroy this hell, because in their book they had already written that hell was the worst place on the planet, whereas the pagan people understood hell is the center of the pagan planet. So on July 24, year 1050, 30,000 army men hired by the Pope made one ring around hell, which is one ringland with one island in the very center, which we will do in another day. And they all came together and they killed everybody, they burned everything, they completely destroyed hell in the year 10.
And we covered that in, I think, 2 videos. We're talking about that in particular.
50. They threw all the rocks down from the stones. The towers are gone, except for the Wabel Tower, which is the big tower over there. But there was a King's Tower, Kuning As Tower, and a Kuning Atar Tower, Ra Tower, Maya Tower. And they threw the stones off and destroyed much of this castle as we know it today. And this is what filled in this lake here. If you went to dig inside this earth here, you would find the stones that they destroyed this. The Finnish government wants to put this thing at the 15th century or something, but the castle is actually 9,034 years old. And this is where the race of human beings, they came out from here. And this is the race of all human beings on this planet. We all come from this ringland here called Asgard, or Hell.
And if he's talking about 9,000 years, he's saying the whole race comes from Hell anyway, right? But like 9,000 years, the Bock Saga is millions of years, right? So I think, I think he's making a generality because 9,000 years, that's putting us to where the latter end of the Ice Age, where probably you were starting to have people coming out from this castle. This is probably the castle where all of the people outside of Ra and Maya, or Per and Ella, their family, the extra during the Ice Age, right? Because all of this would have been Atlantis.
Or Ashel, or Midgard. Had many names, this land. Today we call it Udinma. And Udin is the sun, Udin is the ring, Udin is everything. Ma means the land, so it's the land of Udin. It's the sun land, which was surrounded by one sun going around and around in one circle, as the saga says. This pole here is the Maistan, the maypole, where last month they had one where the girls, they go around with this, it's one ceremony for Maya, the queen. The word Maya is where the word maize, the corn comes from. Maya, the Mayan Indians, and Hindu, Maya means illusion, and it's where our word May comes from. The month of May comes from Mai. So May is when they make the Mai stone, the maypole dance. It's in one honor of Maya, the queen. The king and the queen towers have been destroyed, so they don't have this anymore. And when they did come, they took the throne of this king and this footpaw, or the stool of the king, and it's buried just a few kilometers here in a place called Offerlunden, along with some other things. 2 golden statues, life-size golden statues, and 3 crystal balls, which are, one was from the paradise time, the Paradis, the paradise. Pa is the Papa, Ra is his son, D means to drink or to suck, and sun is the sun, so the Pa and the Ra, they D the sun, the Paradis. Today they put some kind of roof over it so it doesn't become more and more destroyed. We hope one day we can restore this castle back to its... I think inside this Lemminkainen temple there will be one replica of what this castle looked like when it was actually built 9,034 years ago. Tower here is called Ra Bell Tower. It had one shape of one bell with a top, and the king, Ra, or Kuning As, could stand in this tower and he could tell what he had to tell. Kastel. You tell from the Kas, one Kastel. So Ra, he could tell the information. There was this lake everywhere where now his voice come across this lake, so people all around a place called Tunastad, and the people could hear what Ra had to say. And I'm sure there was some system for Maya, but I don't know the system. But for every system of...
And I have to say, the Ra Bell, rebellion, rebel, and then E and On. And we all know about the E for the Holy Land, and then the On trying to remember what on was in the root language. But anyway.
The male, there was also a system for the female. And Ra and Maya were brother-sister. They didn't make children, either one of them. They were part of making the race of people, but they themselves, Maya was virgin, and her 6 sisters, called Hexa, they were also virgins. And the first 11 boys in this story, Ra, the oldest, didn't make children. The 12th son, who we would call the Bock or the Lemminkainen, he was the children maker of this highest family called Pilaret. Pi meaning one circle, Ru meaning peace, and Et meaning family. Here in this Finland today, the sound Piru means the devil for them. But it means the peace ring family. Pi, Ru, Et.
And I believe that Ru is the same Ru that we get Russia from. Russia. The Rus.
Was a hole where they could build one fire on the bottom floor, and each one of these levels had one hole where the heat could rise up to the top up here. This room, I think, one bell-formed tower, because it's called Ra Bell Tower. A long time ago, the people could look up to the sun, and they understood that the sun was the soul, the source of life. And so they could build one sun temple, which the Lemminkainen temple is one sun temple, dedicated to the sun. And this castle is one moon castle, dedicated to the moon, because they felt like the sun was looking down with one smile to see that the people were appreciating the sun. And the moon, also, the light side of the moon is the Ra, so the man in the moon is Ra. And the moon could look down on the people and see that the people were appreciating the moon. The idea of the religions put the God in the space looking down instead of the sun and the moon looking down. The sun has consciousness because it's creating everything. And the moon is part of the consciousness too, because the moon is part of the whole system. The best friend of the moon is the sun. So Ra, his best friend is Es, the sun, the Ras. So the sun and the moon have much to do with this whole system from before. The people appreciated the Ra and the sun, the moon and the sun. And Ra represent the moon, not the sun, as we think today, as the Egyptians said. The light side of the moon is the masculine side, and the dark side of the moon is the feminine. And the feminine doesn't mean, the dark doesn't mean negative in the story. The dark, it just means the mystical side. So there's moon stories. There's stories from the light side of the moon, and there's also stories from the dark side of the moon. Maybe the dark side of the moon stories are a little bit things to look out for in the life, to be aware of. The pagan people, they understood things much different than how we understand today. Today they want to say there's thousands, millions of suns, when there's really only one sun. And they want to say there's hundreds and hundreds of planets, where there's really only one planet. And they want to say many, many moons out there, where we say there's only one moon. Sol means one sun. Muno means one moon. Plan means plan, and et means one. There's one planet. And there's plants on this planet. Mars and Venus and Saturn. There are no plants. There are stars. They're called the morning star and the evening star. Today they have a little bit problem to tell of what's the difference between the sun and a moon and a planet. One sun, one moon, one planet, and millions of stars, which are reflections of the sun. They're not sun themselves, according to sound system.
And you know, that makes me wonder about the wandering luminaries, right? Like why do we have these 7 visible wandering luminaries, and or is it technically 6? And then we have the three outer planets that you can't see. We got the asteroid belt. I wonder what the Bock Saga has to say about that stuff. It may not have anything to much to say, because it just may be. I mean, not about the outer planets, just because if we didn't have telescopes back then, and maybe we didn't, because I don't know if we had reflection mirrors and things like that. Like, it's interesting, right? What kind of tech did we have? Were we able to measure things back then in any level of sophistication the way we do now, for one? And measuring or not, it's just the question of, I just want to know what the mythology says about the wandering luminaries. Were they there before Ma was created? Were they created along with Ma? Were they brought in during the Ragnarok? Like, these are things I want to know. I'm waiting for Michel Merrill to get back to my offer to be interviewed. I believe he's going to say yes. And as you see on the schedule, I've already got Dustin coming on. I think Dustin's big forte is the root language itself. So we'll see how it goes. They say he's a rambling man, but, you know, I was born a rambling man. It'll be great.
This angel I feel to take away, but I won't do it, but Christian angel, which you wouldn't really appreciate this angel being here, but I'll leave it here. Eeyore brought 5 boxes out here, 5, I think, oak boxes. His father, Canute, his mother, Rhea, his sister, Raquel, his brother, who was killed by Lenin, Raphael, and one more. He put these 5 wooden boxes, when the ash tree was standing here, he put these underneath the roots of his ash tree. I think in 1985 or 84 or something, 86 maybe, I'm not sure what year he put these. And there's only one member of this family whose ash is not put here, and that was his great aunt, Christina Victoria Bockstrom, who is the sister of Knut Victor Bockstrom, who is the son of Carl Gustav Bockstrom. And this is where the ash of our friend, where it lays today. One joint here for our good friend. Big nose for you, buddy. Bombele, Bohonat Bom Shankar, Bombele Shiva, Shankari Alex Shiva, boom, for you. This land belonged to the Bock family. They gave it to the church, Snappertuna. It used to be a devil on top of that cross. Up on the top was a wind. Now they've taken it down and put the symbol of Tour up there. And that's the Snappertuna church. There was one tree here from the beginning of time called the Yggdrasil. And the Yggdrasil was the tree of all living humans and all living things on the planet. You see many, many depictions of this world tree and many, many different things. And where we stand here was where this tree was, one ash tree. And the curator of this place, of this church, he cut the ash tree down in the late 80s. I actually stood with my arms on this tree at one time. These 3 grand trees, these 3 pine trees, they crowded out the tree, and he cut the whole thing down. Every member of the Bock family, since Frey and Freya, the first 2 humans on this planet, their ash went underneath this tree. And Eeyore was the last member of this family. And on the 24/6/2011, a group of people from all over the planet, we all met here to put our friend's ash here where this is today. So that angel just killed him.
I'll tell you this much though, right? Like, I do find that interesting, you know, so they cut down the tree, like, obviously this was a, more of a ceremony. This was this was not like the Yggdrasil. I would imagine, because the Yggdrasil must have been some massive thing, right? So you got these 3 trees that kind of, I guess they overrun that Yggdrasil, and it was the curator's best move for that. But that tells me that probably those root systems were interconnected, and I would say that those 3 trees carry that same spirit. And that is the same fucking thing as when Thor is killed by Jormungandr, and then his 3 children success him with Mjolnir.
Om Shankar, Om Vile Shiva, Shankari, Alex Shiva, boom, for everybody's grandmother and everybody's grandfather. That's what he would say. Boom is when you like to chill them in the fire and the smoke comes up, you go boom.
so next week we'll be covering things with Dustin and eventually Michelle, I think. I will poke my nose around to see if there's something else I want to do. Maybe I'll do Who in the Hell is Eeyore Bock, which is just gonna, like I said earlier, it's not the Bock saga, but it's about the man, his life, how he died, so on and so forth. It's a very different kind of story. Om ahum vajraguru pena sizi hum karma cleanse. Thank you, Studio Oak. What is it? Studio Ocklart? It's Studio Ocklart is basically the way that reads. But anyway, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a really good stream today. I was glad to have you. Thank you so much. I've got a few of these interviews lined up or lining up. I'm still checking with a couple of people interested if they want to do it. And then with all of this Bock saga out of the way, I'll be meditating on what I want to cover next on this channel. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Peace out.